dialogue with people as well to really come up with a totally satisfactory answer to that one, because it is a big question. Does that help at all?
Yeah, definitely.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Sorry.
Oh, right.
Okay, an interesting one from Brother Salim, a supplementary. Are we born as optimists, pessimists? If yes, how do we change such an intrinsic personal characteristics?
Oof. Are we born as? I am not sure. I think I'm not up with the latest academic psychology for this particular question. I believe there's a genetic component, but there's also an upbringing and social component to whether we're optimists or pessimists. And I believe it is possible to change at least a bit from one to the other. Of course, in certain situations, it's useful to be pessimistic. So if you are in charge of safety at a nuclear reactor, for example, it's a good idea to be quite pessimistic and think about what could go wrong, rather than thinking, oh, well, it'll probably be okay. That's the kind of thinking that probably got them into trouble at Chernobyl. So, yeah, it's if you look at where you want to get to in the future, if you look at what's working in your life currently, if you look at your own strengths and the strengths of your team, you will tend to become a little bit more optimistic. It will open up some possibilities. If you look at problems all the time, if you look at what's gone wrong, if you look at your failings and shortcomings, you'd probably become more pessimistic. So it's a question of what's more useful in any given situation. I would say when you're leading people, and particularly when you're setting a vision for the future, and particularly when dealing with complex problems, it's better to be optimistic. So it's better to focus on what's working and build that, rather than just looking at what's going wrong and how bad everything is, I would say.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's move to the next person. Let me unmute Mr. Imran Yusuf. Can you hear us? Could you please introduce yourself and ask the question?
Yeah, hi. My name is Imran Yusuf. I'm an executive search consultant. People sometimes like to call us executive recruiters, based out of Saudi Arabia. First of all, thank you, Andy, for such an informative session. It has been excellent in terms of information. I got two quick questions, two really quick questions, and both are in regards to assessments. So the first question is, which online assessment would you recommend for a person to take? That's one. And secondly, I know it's a very complicated question, but how can I, while I am interviewing a C-level executive, how can I assess his emotional intelligence face to face? That's it.
Look into your eyes.
Okay. Right. So there are. So the first one then about which online assessments can I take? You're looking for yourself or for your candidates or what?
Initially for myself, and then of course for a candidate.
Right. Okay. It's very much a horses for courses question, bearing in mind that serious emotional intelligence assessments with scientific validity behind them that have been normed and validated and so on, there is a cost associated with those, and it's usually at least around the $100 mark, probably more now. Having said that, the most useful one for recruitment is probably the Bar-on EQI assessment. That's been shown to have some positive correlation to job performance in certain roles. With an executive already in post, the ECI 360, which is the one I'm qualified in, and which works with this 4-quadrant model, is a good one. Of course, that's a 360 degree, so they will be getting feedback from their employees, from their colleagues, from their boss, and so on. Ali, I've got a little unvalidated emotional intelligence assessment. There was some talk of Mile putting that up online. I don't know if that's available in the Mile community yet.
I think maybe it has been compiled, but we have not populated it as yet, which we'll do it and then perhaps we'll inform everyone.
Okay. Yeah. In the meantime, you could download the paper copy from coachingleaders.co.uk, which is my website. But I want to emphasise that's really not a validated assessment in any way. It's more of a thought provoker. So I would say for recruitment, the EQI probably the best one. For executives already in post, where you have they've been working there for at least 6 months, so people have some experience of working with them. Probably the ECI 360 assessment, but neither of those are cheap. So doing them on a large scale wouldn't be very economical. Right, second question. How can you assess somebody's emotional intelligence in an interview as you're talking to them? Well, first thing is you get a feel for it. There are various questions that you can ask, various things you can arrange depending on what qualities you're looking for. So, for example, if you're looking for how much attention they pay to other people and how much they care about other people, how about this? You can accidentally, on purpose, drop your pen near their feet, and if he picks it up for you, that would suggest that at least he's paying some kind of attention to other people. If he ignores it, that's also telling you something about that person, which, you know, depending on the role, may not be may not rule them out. But if you're looking for something in the kind of customer service or interacting with the press kind of area, you'd want them to be at least paying attention to what other people do. There are questions you can ask which will tell you how comfortable they are working on their own or how much feedback they need. You could ask them, how do you know when you're doing a good job? And the answers will be somewhere along the spectrum from I get feedback from my customers or from my manager or from my colleagues, all the way along to I just know. So for roles where the person has to think independently and take decisions independently, you're probably going to want more of a kind of internal frame of reference where they have a pretty good idea themselves whether they're doing a good job or not. For lower levels and on the front line of customer service, it's quite useful for people to be more reliant on feedback, because then if the customer has a problem, they have a problem. A good set of questions that you can look at for recruitment is and interviews is the book Words That Change Minds by Shelley Rose Charvet. Words That Change Minds. That you can look that up, and it's a good book. It's very readable, and it gives you 11 or 12 questions that you can ask that show different aspects of the person's personality, many of which are related to emotional intelligence. You could ask them to tell you about a time at work that gave you trouble, for example, and depending on how they talk about it, you'll get a feel for how they are dealing with other people. I feel like I've talked about this one quite a lot, so maybe we should have another question.
Yes.
Does that help? Okay, great.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Imran, for your question. Let's move to another one. There's another hand been raised. Maura Moss. Hi, could you hear us, please? Maura? I think unable to hear. So let me move to the chat box.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. There's a question from Tasneem, who works in the Pakistan Civil Aviation Authority. here is a scenario. You face a situation where you are unable to clearly know the emotional state by apparent body language, or body language is misleading. How can you get to relate to emotions of the person if you don't know what they are? Any solution to get out of this maze?
Okay, so I'm taking it that either you're not actually physically with the person, so you can't see them, and you're not in touch with them over the phone, so you can't hear the tone of their voice, or it could be one of those people that really doesn't give very much away. They're keeping up what we might call a poker face, where they're giving very little evidence of their internal emotional state. I used to work with a guy like this who he ran a small company that my small company was dealing with, and everyone was scared of having meetings with him because he really didn't give anything away. His face was completely expressionless, and you didn't get all of the nods and grunts and smiles that you normally get in ordinary conversation. So what I did, I matched his way of being. So I became fairly expressionless myself, and I, answered questions when he asked them and conversed with him, but I left out all the emotional stuff. And I think it was a tactic on his part because it made people uncomfortable, and that can be useful in certain situations. As I started to match him and I didn't laugh at his jokes and so on, he came to respect me more. He would take meetings with me rather than with my boss, and so on. So my first step there, if it's a person who's not giving much away emotionally, is to match their kind of energy levels, their expressiveness, and so on. So if they're not giving much away, don't you give much away either. Now, is it possible to find from the chat box if that's the situation we're talking about, or is this more about when you're only communicating with somebody by email or something like that?
Well, Tasneem, if you could do a supplementary on this, and if you allow me, we can move to the next question as well, because there are a couple of questions in the chat box. So what do you advise,
Sure.
Andy? Meanwhile, Tasneem can write a supplementary based on your suggestion.
Yeah, while we're waiting for the supplementary, let's get the next question underway.
Okay, there was a hand raised again. Let me see. Akanka Rashid, could you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Could you please introduce yourself and ask the question?
Sure. My name is Akanke, and I'm a communication specialist. I do several things, but they're all in line with communication and leadership. I wanted to ask a question related to the question, what are you feeling? Sometimes it's not an easy question to answer for many people, and what can you offer in terms of how to classify one's feelings? Because if you're misclassifying your feelings, then everything else will sort of be off, it'll be skewed a little bit. So talk about the importance of really being able to recognize what your feelings are. I mean, like on the extremes, you can recognize anger or extreme happiness, but there are branches of emotions that I think a lot of people are not necessarily aware of. And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, you need to create the space and the quietness where you're not distracted in order to be able to have that level of introspection, to be able to ask that question, what am I feeling? Because very often, and this is particularly true in the West, I think, people distract themselves with TV or with activity or with alcohol or whatever, so that they actually